the entire agri-food sector bears the brunt of the climate crisis.
Pour parler d'agriculture et d'Europe à la jeunesse.
Proteste der Landwirte zeigen, wie wichtig der stratégische Dialog ist.
La pâte, c'est plus du tiers du budget total de l'Union européenne.
We have to find a new consensus on the future of agriculture.
Welcome to this 52nd episode of Food for Europe. At the end of February, we made a special live programme from the Salon de l'Agriculture, the international agricultural show in Paris. Our focus was the new Vision for Agriculture and Food that the European Commission had just published. Who, then, more suitable than the European Commissioner for Agriculture and Food, Christophe Hansen, to respond to our questions about the future that this new vision points towards? This episode is a summary of the live debate, and you can listen to and see the whole of it on our YouTube page. In addition to Commissioner Hansen, Food for Europe's guests in Paris were Director of Strategy and Political Analysis at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Agriculture and Rural Development, Geslain-Lanéelle, President of La Coopération agricole, Dominique Chargé, the Secretary-General of Young Farmers, Quentin Le Guillous, and from the French Agricultural Academy, Jean-Marie Séronie. Commissioner Hansen, before we take a deeper dive into the content of the new vision, could you describe to us the background to the development of this vision and the reasons that led you to reconsider the direction of the CAP?
Last year, our farmers took to the streets, and I think rightly so, because they felt they were being pushed around on all sides. Whether it was accusations of being responsible for climate change or whatever. Personally, I think that farmers are rather the first victims of climate change, because they are confronted with floods and droughts, but they are also our best defense against the effects of climate change. And so, rather than forcing them to do certain practices or respect certain limits, we must encourage them to adopt practices that are beneficial for the environment and the climate. And if they do so voluntarily, I think it will have a whole new effect. Then, of course, they also demanded fair prices for their products. And that can't be taken for granted. Indeed, many of them are sometimes forced to sell their products below the price of production, and that is unacceptable. Secondly, administrative simplification, because we should also accept that it's one of the major obstacles stopping young people from becoming farmers. When they are confronted with all this, it's just too much. They need help, and more than anything, simplification is required.
Commissioner, take us into the substance of the vision. What are its main elements?
Firstly, the attractiveness of the job. In the end, it must be remunerated. It must be simpler and it must be made more attractive. The second is competitiveness. It's very clear farmers want to produce and to be able to live from their production. That's something where we also have to allow them to deploy innovation that helps them do this. We don't have enough investment at the moment. If we talk about investment or lack of investment, we are talking about a lack of innovation and also a lack of progress for more sustainable production. We really have to insist on that. And there's also another dimension, the production of resources. This is very clear because without water you cannot produce, and so on. So it's in the best interest of farmers to protect resources. And the fourth point is to recreate the link between the land, food and citizens. And that's something very important. When we make rural areas more attractive once again, and also connect the farmer, the primary producer, with the consumer more.
Jean-Marie Séronie from the French Agricultural Academy. A first reaction from you.
What strikes me especially is the strong emphasis the vision places on competitiveness. It's a new emphasis expressed much more forcefully than by the previous Commission. The Commissioner mentioned a strong focus on simplification, which is also in the vision, but also on the land and our proximity to farming in various ways. Personally, it seems to me to be a step in the right direction, and at the same time, as always, it raises questions about how we can be as close as possible to the land while remaining a common agricultural policy. This is still a central issue.
Quentin Le Guillous from Young Farmers. Your reaction, please.
We are fully committed to this vision. Young Farmers considers itself European because in today's geopolitical environment, compared to around 70 million consumers in France, speaking about 460 million consumers overall in the European Union gives us much more influence, especially in discussions and negotiations with third countries. We have a major issue today, which is to have a better Europe. And we must succeed in developing a common approach to all these constraints that we might have in the European Union. We should turn these constraints into advantages. We should talk about all the tools and means of production, standards and so on that we have today in France, amongst the highest in the European Union. It would be good to succeed in levelling up. And once we have done that, great, but then we have to look at production and competitiveness within member states themselves.
Dominique Chargé from Coopération, agricole. A reaction from you about what the Commissioner outlined.
I don't know if we can call this a radical change of course, but we can certainly call it a major shift in focus. My reaction can only be one of satisfaction. It's completely justified and for two main reasons. The first is that farmers in France, many of them, but also all over Europe, have over the past 18 months demonstrated that they are incapable of understanding what is expected of them and the means they are given to do it. In other words, we expect things from them, but we give them completely the opposite of what they need. We ban them from producing when they should be producing. We are told that we need to change our models, but we aren't given the means to do so. So there has been a total lack of understanding, including on the issue of prices. And I also like to come back to the urgent need to address value throughout the food chain. There will be no agriculture if there is no agri-food industry on our territory, and there will be no industry if there is no agriculture. And that's the pillar of our food sovereignty. So we are obviously completely in line with this logic, which I welcome. Now we must move from words and declarations to actions.
Let's go back to the main elements of the vision, one of which is to make farming more attractive, and within that goal, to attract more young people to agriculture. So first of all, Quentin, as a representative of young farmers, explain to us a little about what makes it difficult for young people to access the profession.
Currently, we're still coming out of 18 very complicated months. Last year we had parts of France with no new farmers moving in to replace farmers retiring. So that makes the situation quite urgent. We have a new generation that is coming, which wants to prioritize social issues. That means, like for everyone else, to enjoy life, to make friends, to get married, to have children. I talk constantly about what a normal life means for farmers. But how do we manage to adapt the way society is developing? In France, new farmers have an average age of 33. As time goes on, the figure goes up. We see many examples of young people who are going to another job first, who will train longer, and who then return to the family farm, or who suddenly want a change in their lives and want to go back to their roots. All well and good, but how do we support them?
Another subject that seems to make farmers angry is the administrative burden. Dominique Chargé, is it really that serious?
All so-called administrative regulatory constraints, I think it's absolutely terrifying for a young person who arrives today. I like to say that I haven't been doing the same job for 30 years. I started by milking cows. Today, I fill out paperwork. No, I'm exaggerating. The cows are still milked, but We spent more time, that's for sure, on regulatory issues, on checks.
Catherine Geslain-Lanéelle from DG Agri. We've just heard about the difficulties for young people in the profession and the burden of paperwork. What are the responses of the new vision for agriculture to these concerns?
The question of attractiveness depends for a young person on many elements that have been mentioned. Making a living, that's what the first proposals in the vision is about, and not only through public support. Farmers, young farmers, they want to make a living from their profession. So there are a series of concrete proposals setting out how we intend to provide farmers, young and old, with ways to be paid for services that are not necessarily paid for by the market, or at least not completely. All the services that farmers provide in terms of the environment, carbon storage in the soil, and there are other mechanisms at European level which we have not developed much until now. For example, issues of access to land, access to investment. And so on this point, what the Commissioner proposed, and this is a general point in this vision, is to work with the players, not simply tell them, you're going to do this, or you're going to do that, and you're going to do it within this timetable, but let's work and sit around the table to define what he called a strategy on generational renewal, and in which we would like to explore concretely with clear courses of action. How can we better observe what is happening on the land market? Because we know very well that this is an obstacle to setting up and also to investments.
Jean-Marie Séronie, you also wanted to talk about risks, security and risk insurance.
Previously, the Commission certainly didn't want to hear about an insurance system and absolutely did not want to take insurance systems into account in agricultural policy. It allowed member states to subsidize farmers for insurance. And in the vision, I see that it appears to be a tool for the Commission, insurance systems. One other point that concerns me, however, is that we talk a lot about targeting, so we want to target young people. So does that mean that we are on a larger budget? Or does it mean the same budget? And that if we target in this way, someone else has to lose out?
Dominique Chargé, for you and for the agricultural sector, what are the risks that we are talking about here?
I think that the issue of risk management is a major one because the risks are enormous and they are multiple. Geopolitical risks, as we can see, health risks, climate risks. We have risks today at all levels. So yes, I think that the question of risk management is a major one. And here we're talking about risk insurance, crisis reserve insurance. That's very good. I think that we must be proactive on risk management. Catherine addressed it, and I totally agree. We need to transform our models to have tools at our disposals that mean we can use plant genetics to better withstand heat waves, better withstand droughts. I believe especially in the protection of our farms through vaccinations to deal with the new health risks as we did perfectly in the 1960s. We now have a series of new risks that are probably coming in connection with climate change, and we'll have to work on vaccination programs that must be massive and global. That's very important to work on that.
Catherine Geslain-Lanéelle, risk and risk insurance. Does the new vision for agriculture and food have answers in this respect?
It's clear that a farmer's job is becoming more and more risky. There have always been risks, market volatility, the weather. It's always existed. That's nothing new. But on top of that, we have seen a whole series of other risks develop that are linked to geopolitical situations, to climate change. There is a whole section in the vision on adaptation to climate change. The recognition that agriculture, of course, contributes, it emits greenhouse gases, but it is also the first victim of climate change. So the vision focuses on the need to improve and strengthen the range of tools that already exist. There are some tools in the common agricultural policy. It's not just management, not just crisis reserve that has changed its name, which is called the agricultural reserve. What does that mean? For example, as a farmer, you can access financing for a portion of your insurance premiums for certain risks that are insurable. And also, it can help them to support what I would call adaptation to certain risks that are well known, adaptation to climate change that is ongoing, and therefore to look at how we can help a farmer, in particular a young farmer who knows that in 10 years' time, the climatic conditions are going to be different. So that the farmer anticipates this and prepare for it in terms of production choices and methods, so that the farmer has the tools that enable this adaptation.
Now let's consider agriculture in the broader context of the economy and also in the context of international markets. Dominique Chargé, give us a picture of the major issues for you.
We must also focus on a better economic organization of production. Firstly, to better respond to what the markets and consumers all expect. We're talking here about the domestic consumer markets and export markets. We also need to provide predictability and income security. What for? Because if we are able, through the economic organization of production, to put into production what the market expects at the time we bring it to the market, then we can engage in an inverted contractual process in forward motion, which allows us to commit to paying farmers. That's very important. It's also a risk guarantee tool. Personally, I insist very much that today we should not damage, we should not distort the systems of economic organizations of production that work and upon which we will have to rely to better meet the expectations of the market.
Quentin Le Guillous, farming in the context of the wider economy and also in the European context, what are the issues that matter to you?
There's a real conversation to be had here. How do we bring back taste, better consumption, the taste for gastronomy in France? We boast about our quality gastronomy and our diet, the way we nourish our children, the food on our plates. There you have it. We have to succeed in coming back to the roots, the local quality, whether French or from other countries, and how we value and manage the notion of harmonization within the EU. If tomorrow my products are totally harmonized with my German or Italian neighbors, I don't mind eating their products. And there won't be a problem because we'll be in a fair competition. So that's also the strength of the European Union that we need to push forward.
Catherine Geslain-Lanéelle, what are the advantages of European agriculture in an international context?
The essence of Europe is its agriculture and food sector. It is present in international markets, and we, as Europeans, we are a major global player. We are one of the most important global exporters, and we are also a global importer. So on this, what the vision says is that we must remain a major player on the international scene. Europe must not close itself. And sometimes it takes a little courage to say it, especially in a context where we can see that some of our international partners are tempted by trade war and protectionism. I don't think anyone wins in the end. What is also important, and what we have heard a lot in recent years, is that Europe should close itself off and turn in on itself, but that it should protect its production and align the standards it applies to products imported from third countries with its own standards. And so that's a new element in the vision, this notion of reciprocity. It's the idea, for example, of rules that are linked to the use of pesticides and animal welfare, and that we can do better without triggering a trade war. For example, by not accepting products imported from third countries that contain residues of pesticides that have been banned in the European Union for health or environmental reasons.
Contiennent des résidus de pesticides qui ont été interdits dans l'Union européenne pour des raisons de santé ou d'environnement.
We're coming to the end of our debate, and to conclude, let's have a final round of the table and give everyone the opportunity, in a few words, to summarise the points that were, for each of you, the most important in this debate. Jean-Marie Séronie, let's begin with you. What are, in your opinion, the most important points you want to emphasise?
This notion of having a clear focus on production, competitiveness, agricultural production, it seems very clear to me. On the other hand, I don't think we need a change of course. That is to say that we no longer need to consider the environment now. It's about production. It's a common agricultural policy that is strengthened in relation to the dimension of the environment for future generations, for the framework of carbon neutrality.
Quentin Le Guillous, what stood out in this discussion for you?
Two sentences or a few words just. Generational renewal, and here we emphasize income, productivity, European competitiveness and our French lands. And then, of course, adaptation to and anticipation of climate change. I think that the values of our organization are almost 100% reflected in the European vision, and we are moving in the right direction. For me, everything is covered.
Dominique Chargé, your thoughts on what we've discussed today?
Two words: generational renewal and food sovereignty with strong support, competitiveness and transition, payments for environmental services. I think it's very good if we can move forward on this. And finally, risk management.
And Catherine Geslain-Lanéelle from DG Agri, a final thought from you.
Agriculture and food have been at the heart of European integration for more than 60 years. And the vision for agriculture and food is a message of hope and a confirmation that it will continue for at least another 60 years. The idea is that we work together to sustain the success of our agriculture and agri-food sector. And obviously, the common agricultural policy will play an essential role in this context.
And with that, our 52nd episode of Food for Europe draws to a close. A special episode recorded and broadcast live from the Salon de l'Agriculture in Paris. Thanks to our guests for their time, participation, and insights. Join us again soon for another episode of Food for Europe. We look forward to your company then.
The entire agri-food sector bears the brunt of the climate crisis.
Pour parler d'agriculture et d'Europe à la jeunesse.
Proteste der Landwirte zeigen, wie wichtig der stratégische Dialog ist.
La PAC, c'est plus du tiers du budget total de l'Union européenne.
We have to find a new consensus on the future of agriculture.